She was 8 years old when she found an injured man tied up in an alley and gave him her chocolate bar before running for help. What she didn't know, the man she saved was the city's most feared crime boss. And that one act of kindness would make him tear down his entire empire just to keep her safe. The chocolate bar was melting. Lucy Bennett pressed it against her lunchbox, trying to save what was left of her afternoon snack. The October wind bit through her thin jacket as she walked down Ashland Avenue, past the boarded-up shops and graffiti-covered walls that made up this forgotten corner of Chicago. She shouldn't have been alone. Not at 8 years old. Not in this neighborhood. But the school field trip to the planetarium had been canceled at the last minute, something about the bus breaking down, and her mother was stuck at her double shift at the diner. So Lucy did what she always did. She walked home by herself, humming the songs her grandmother used to sing, pretending the cracked sidewalks were a yellow brick road leading somewhere magical. Anywhere but here. She turned into the alley between Monroe and Jackson, the shortcut she'd taken 100 times before. That's when she heard it.
A sound. Soft.
Almost like breathing, but wrong. Ragged. Desperate. Lucy stopped humming. Her small fingers tightened around the lunchbox handle. Every instinct her parents had drilled into her screamed one word. Run. Strange sounds in alleys meant trouble. Trouble meant danger. Danger meant... She saw him. At first, Lucy thought it was a pile of garbage bags slumped against the old streetlight. But garbage bags didn't wear expensive shoes. They didn't have hands tied behind poles with zip ties, so tight the skin had turned purple. The man was slumped forward, his dark suit torn and stained with something that looked like rust. No, not rust.
Blood.
His face was a mess of bruises, one eye swollen completely shut. A gag had been stuffed in his mouth, and his breathing came in short, painful gasps. Lucy's heart hammered against her ribs. She should run. She should scream. She should. His good eye opened. It found her immediately, and for one terrible second, Lucy couldn't move. She expected to see something frightening in that gaze. Anger, maybe. Or cruelty. The kind of look that would haunt her nightmares. Instead, she saw something that shocked her even more. He looked sad. Not scary sad. Not monster sad. Just tired. Like her father after his factory shifts. Like her mother when the bills piled too high. Like someone who'd been hurt so badly they'd forgotten what kindness looked like. The man tried to speak, but the gag muffled everything. His body trembled, not from trying to escape, but from the cold. From pain. From something Lucy was too young to name, but old enough to recognize. He was dying. The thought hit her like ice water. This man, whoever he was, would die right here in this dirty alley if someone didn't help him. And there was no one else around. Just her. Just Lucy. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. Baby girl, you judge people by their eyes. Eyes don't lie. Eyes show you the soul. Lucy took a step forward. Then another. Her hands shook as she fumbled with her lunchbox, pulling out the half-melted chocolate bar. It was stupid. She knew it was stupid. What would chocolate do for a man who'd been beaten and left to die? But it was all she had. I'm sorry it's melted, Lucy whispered, unwrapping the foil with trembling fingers. She held it up to his cracked, bloodied lips. My mom says chocolate makes everything better. Even bad days. The man stared at her. For a moment, Lucy thought he might try to pull away, might refuse her silly offering.
But then something changed in that eye.
It glistened, wet and bright, and Lucy realized with a start that he was crying. He took the smallest bite, barely able to move his jaw. A tear rolled down his bruised cheek. Lucy's own eyes burned. Don't worry, she said, her voice stronger now. I'm going to get help. I'm going to find someone. You're not going to die here. I promise.
She turned and ran.
Her legs pumped as fast as they could, lunchbox banging against her side, her worn sneakers slapping against the pavement. She burst out of the alley onto the main street, searching frantically for anyone, a police officer, a store owner, Anyone who could help. Help, she screamed at a passing woman. There's a man in the alley. He's hurt really bad. Please. The woman quickened her pace, avoiding eye contact. Please. Lucy tried again with an elderly man. Someone's dying. Please help him. He pulled out his phone, but whether to call for help or to ignore her, Lucy didn't know. She kept running, kept shouting until finally, she saw a patrol car parked outside a bodega 2 blocks away. She sprinted toward it, her lungs burning. Behind her, in that cold, forgotten alley, Marco Santini closed his eye and waited. The taste of cheap chocolate still lingered on his tongue, the first sweet thing he'd tasted in years. The first kindness anyone had shown him in longer than he could remember. He didn't know her name yet, but he would never forget her face. 3 hours later, crime scene tape fluttered in the evening wind. News vans crowded the alley entrance. And on every channel, the same headline flashed. Notorious crime lord Marco Santini found near death, saved by a mysterious child. The city would spend weeks wondering who that child was. Marco Santini already knew he'd spend the rest of his life wondering why. The television flickered in the cramped living room of the Bennett apartment, casting blue shadows across the peeling wallpaper. Lucy sat cross-legged on the worn carpet, still in yesterday's clothes, her uneaten cereal growing soggy in its bowl. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face. That bruised, broken face. That one eye looking at her like she was the last good thing left in the world. Shocking discovery in downtown Chicago yesterday afternoon. The news anchor's voice cut through her thoughts. Marco Santini, alleged head of the Santini crime family, was found bound and severely beaten in an alley off Ashland Avenue. Police say an anonymous tip led them to the location. Sources confirm a young witness may have been involved. The front door slammed open. Lucy's mother, Rita Bennett, stumbled in carrying 2 grocery bags, her diner uniform stained with coffee and exhaustion. Her father, Tom, followed close behind, his factory coveralls still dusty from his morning shift. They both froze when they saw the television. Marco Santini's mugshot filled the screen, a younger version of the man Lucy had found, but with the same dark eyes. Cold eyes. Killer's eyes. The news called him the Devil of Chicago. They listed his alleged crimes: extortion, murder, drug trafficking, witness intimidation. Rita's grocery bags hit the floor. Oranges rolled across the linoleum. Lucy, her mother's voice came out strangled. Lucy, where were you yesterday? After school? Lucy's stomach twisted. She'd told them she came straight home. She'd lied. I walked home. Like always. Through Ashland, her father's face had gone pale. Through that alley, the silence was answer enough. Tom Bennett crossed the room in 3 strides and knelt in front of his daughter, gripping her shoulders. Not hard, but firm. His hands shook. Did you see something? Yesterday? Did you see him? Lucy nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks.
He was hurt, Daddy.
He was tied up and bleeding, and I thought he was going to die. So Jesus Christ, Tom stood abruptly, running his hands through his hair. Jesus Christ, Rita, she's the witness they're talking about. Our daughter found Marco goddamn Santini. I gave him chocolate, Lucy whispered. And then I got help. I did the right thing. Grandma always said. Your grandma's dead. Her father's voice cracked like thunder. Lucy flinched.
He never yelled.
Not at her. Never at her. But he was scared. She could see it in his eyes. The same fear she'd felt in that alley. Rita moved quickly, pulling Lucy into her arms.
Tom,
stop. She didn't know. That man's the devil, Lucy. Tom's voice dropped to something worse than yelling, something quiet and desperate. He's killed people. Destroyed families. He's everything wrong with this city, and he couldn't finish. He turned away, pressing his palms against the wall. I just wanted to help. Lucy sobbed into her mother's shoulder. He looked so sad. People like that don't get sad, baby. Rita stroked her daughter's hair, her own voice thick with tears. They get dangerous.
And now?
Now he knows what you look like. What if he comes looking? What if his enemies come looking? What if? The news said anonymous. Tom cut in, grasping at hope. They said anonymous witness. Maybe he doesn't know. Maybe we're safe. But even as he said it, none of them believed it. That night, new rules were established. No more walking alone. Ever. No more shortcuts. No more talking to strangers. The door got a new deadbolt. The windows stayed locked even in the heat. Lucy's freedom had been traded for her kindness. 12 miles away, in a private room at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, Marco Santini lay awake. The machines beeped steadily, for fluids dripped into his veins. 3 cracked ribs, a punctured lung, severe dehydration, and more bruises than the doctors cared to count. His own lieutenant, Vincent Borelli, had done this. His own men had left him to rot. The betrayal should have consumed him. The rage should have been unbearable. Instead, all he could think about was chocolate. The door opened quietly. Luca Moretti, his most trusted soldier, the only one who hadn't turned, stepped inside. His face was grim. "Boss, you're awake." Marco's voice came out rough, barely above a whisper. "Status. Borelli's dead. I handled it personally. The others, they're scattered." Scared, Luca moved closer, his voice dropping. "But that's not what you want to know, is it?" Marco's jaw tightened. "The police report. What did it say?" "Anonymous tip. Called in by a scared kid, from what I heard. Witnesses saw a little girl running down Ashland, screaming for help." Luca paused. "A schoolgirl, boss. Maybe 8, 9 years old. That's who found you." The machines beeped faster. "Find out her name." "Boss. Find out her name." Marco's good eye fixed on Luca with an intensity that made even the hardened soldier step back. "I don't care what it takes. I don't care who you have to pay. That child saved my life when my own blood left me to die. I need to know who she is." Luca nodded slowly. "And when I find her—" Marco was quiet for a long moment. Outside the window, Chicago glittered in the darkness, a city built on power and fear and blood.
His city.
His kingdom. A kingdom that suddenly felt very small compared to one little girl's kindness. "When you find her," Marco finally said, "you make sure nothing bad ever happens to her. Nothing. Not while I'm still breathing." 2 weeks had changed everything. Lucy's world had shrunk to the size of a hallway. Home to school. School to home. Her mother walked her every morning, gripping her hand so tight it left marks. Her father picked her up every afternoon, eyes scanning every face, every car, every shadow. The other kids asked why her parents were so paranoid now. Lucy lied and said her grandmother was sick. It was easier than explaining that she'd saved a monster's life. But even monsters left marks. On this particular Tuesday morning, Lucy sat in the school cafeteria during morning recess, her lunchbox open in front of her. Inside were 3 chocolate bars, the same cheap brand she'd given to the man in the alley. Her mother had started packing extra ever since that day.
Lucy didn't know why.
Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was hope. Maybe Rita Bennett just wanted her daughter to feel normal again. "Can I have one?" A small voice broke through Lucy's thoughts. Jenny Martinez stood beside the table, her clothes threadbare and worn, her stomach probably growling. Lucy knew that look, the look of a kid who'd come to school without breakfast. She'd worn it herself many times before. Yeah, Lucy handed her a bar, without hesitation. "Here." "Really?" Jenny's eyes widened. "Really? I have 3-inch." Within minutes, 2 more kids appeared. David, whose dad had lost his job last month. Sarah, whose mom worked 3 jobs and forgot to pack lunches. Lucy gave away the other bars without thinking twice, keeping none for herself. "You're nice," Jenny said, chocolate smeared on her chin. "My sister says nice people get eaten alive in this city." Lucy smiled sadly. My grandma said nice people make the city worth living in. Is your grandma here?
No.
She died last year. Oh, Jenny hugged her suddenly, fiercely. I'm sorry. Lucy hugged her back, and for the first time in 2 weeks, the tight knot in her chest loosened just a little. Outside the chain-link fence, behind the tinted windows of a black Mercedes, Marco Santini watched. He leaned heavily on his cane, a temporary necessity the doctors insisted upon. The bruises had faded to ugly yellows and greens. The ribs still ached with every breath. But he was alive. Against all odds, impossibly, he was alive. And there she was. Luca had found her in 3 days. Lucy Bennett, 8 years old, 3rd grade, lived at 2847 Kedzie Avenue with her parents. Father worked at a plastics factory. Mother was a waitress. No criminal records. No gang affiliations. Just a normal, struggling Chicago family trying to survive. Just a little girl who'd chosen kindness when the world taught her to look away. Marco watched as Lucy gave away her chocolate bars one by one until she had nothing left. Watched as she smiled at the other children, that same gentle smile she'd given him in the alley when he'd been nothing but a broken, bleeding stranger. Something cracked inside his chest. Something that had been frozen for so long he'd forgotten it existed. Boss, we should go. Luca shifted nervously in the driver's seat. Someone might recognize you. Marco didn't move. She gave them all away. What? The chocolate. She kept none for herself. She just gave it all away. Marco's voice was barely a whisper. Who does that? A kid who doesn't know any better? No, Marco shook his head slowly. A kid who knows exactly what hunger feels like. Look at her jacket, Luca. It's 2 sizes too small. Look at her shoes. There's tape holding the sole together. Her family has nothing, and she's still. He couldn't finish. For the first time in 27 years, since he was a boy himself, before the streets had carved out his soul and replaced it with steel, Marco Santini felt his eyes burn with something other than rage. The bell rang. Children scattered toward the school building like startled birds. Lucy grabbed her lunchbox and followed, her too small jacket flapping in the October wind. Marco smiled. It was a small smile, barely there at all. But it was real. Genuine. The first honest smile he'd worn since. He couldn't even remember when. Drive, he said quietly. But before Luca could start the engine, Marco pulled out a white envelope from his coat pocket. He'd written it last night in his hospital room, his hand shaking from more than just physical weakness. Inside was a simple card. Thank you for seeing me, for treating me like a person.
You saved more than my life. M.S.
And a $20 bill. Crisp.
New.
Not enough to change anything, but enough to buy a few more chocolate bars. Enough to say, I see you too. Give this to the school secretary, Marco instructed. Tell her it's for Lucy Bennett. Tell her it's from a grateful stranger. Luca hesitated. Boss, is this wise? Getting involved with. Just do it. 10 minutes later, Luca returned to the car. The envelope had been delivered. Marco settled back into his seat as they pulled away from the curb, already planning his next move. There were enemies to handle, a fractured organization to rebuild or dismantle, betrayals to address. But for the first time in his life, those things felt less urgent than ensuring one little girl stayed safe. That afternoon, when Rita Bennett arrived to pick up Lucy, the school secretary handed her a white envelope. Someone left this for your daughter. Rita's blood ran cold. She knew instantly, instinctively, who it was from. Her hands trembled as she opened it, read the card, saw the money. Where did this come from? A man dropped it off this morning. Very polite. Didn't leave a name. Rita didn't wait. She grabbed Lucy's hand and walked straight to the parking lot. Lucy barely had time to wave goodbye to her friends. At home, Tom was already there, pacing the kitchen. He found her, Rita said, throwing the envelope on the table. He knows where she goes to school. Tom picked up the card, his face darkening. $20. Like that's supposed to make it okay. Like he's not a killer. Without another word, he tore the card in half. Then quarters. He threw it all in the trash, the $20 bill included. We don't take blood money, he said firmly.
Not now.
Not ever. Lucy said nothing. But late that night, when her parents were asleep, she crept to the kitchen and retrieved the torn pieces of the card from the trash. She taped them together carefully, reading the words again and again by flashlight. Thank you for seeing me. In the darkness, Lucy whispered back, You're welcome. Marco's mansion in Oak Park stood like a fortress, all stone walls and iron gates, purchased with money that had blood in its history. He sat in his study, the one room in this enormous house that didn't feel empty, surrounded by leather-bound books he'd never read and expensive art he'd never appreciated. 1 month since the alley. 1 month since a child's kindness had cracked something open inside him that he couldn't seal shut again. The door opened without knocking. Only one person had that privilege. We have a problem. Luca's face was grave as he entered, carrying a tablet. A big one. Marco set down his whiskey. Borelli's crew. Worse. The Vargas family. The name alone was enough to sour the air. The Vargas crew operated out of the South Side, ruthless, unpredictable, and hungry for territory. They'd been circling Marco's operations for years, waiting for weakness. They'd found it when he was tied to that pole. They're making moves? Marco asked. Not just moves. Threats. Luca placed the tablet on the desk, pulling up a recorded phone conversation. We intercepted this 2 hours ago. It's Diego Vargas talking to his lieutenants. Marco pressed play. Diego's voice crackled through the speaker, thick with a Chicago accent and barely contained rage. Santini thinks he's untouchable? The old man gets his ass handed to him, survives by pure luck, and now he's what? Reformed? Going soft. Another voice. Word is he's been quiet. Real quiet. Hasn't made a single move against anyone. Because he's weak, Diego spat. And weak men don't deserve empires. We hit his operations next week. The docks, the clubs, everything. We take it all. What about Santini himself? A pause. Then Diego laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You seen the news coverage? They're still talking about that mystery kid who found him. Some little girl playing hero. Another pause, darker this time. I say we find out who she is. Send her a message. Let Santini know what happens when you show weakness. Let that kid learn what happens when you play hero in this city. The recording ended. Marco's hand had frozen on the glass. The whiskey trembled, creating tiny ripples that caught the lamplight. Boss. Luca's voice sounded distant, like it was coming from underwater. For 27 years, Marco had felt many things. Rage. Satisfaction. Cold calculation. He'd ordered beatings, disappearances, worse. He'd built an empire on fear and maintained it with ruthless efficiency. Nothing shook him. Nothing touched him. Until now. This feeling coursing through his veins, hot and sharp and utterly foreign. It took him a moment to recognize it. Fear. Not for himself. He'd faced death before, would face it again without flinching. But this was different. This was the kind of fear that parents must feel. The kind that made rational people do irrational things. The kind that could consume you if you let it. Lucy Bennett, Marco said quietly. She's 8 years old. She likes chocolate. She gives away her lunch to hungry kids. And Diego Vargas wants to hurt her because she had the misfortune of being kind to me. Boss, we can handle Vargas. We can. Handle him? Marco stood abruptly, his cane clattering to the floor. Pain shot through his ribs, but he ignored it. You think this is about territory? About business? He's threatening a child, Luca. A child who did nothing wrong except show mercy to a dying man. I know, but... No, Marco's voice dropped to something dangerous. Something that made even Luca step back. No. This ends differently. Diego wants to make an example? Fine. We'll make an example. But not of her. Never of her. He moved to the window, looking out at the manicured lawn, the imported sculptures, the fountain that cost more than most people earned in a year. All of it suddenly felt obscene. Wasteful.
Wrong.
The Bennets, Marco said, his breath fogging the glass. Where do they live again? Kedzie Avenue. Small apartment building. 3rd floor, Unit 3C. Security? A front door lock that probably doesn't work and a fire escape that leads right to their window. Boss, it's not secure. At all. Marco turned, his mind already working through scenarios. I want 2 men on that building. Round the clock. Best we have. Not the muscle, the smart ones. The ones who can blend in. They watch. They protect. And if anyone comes near that family with ill intent, they handle it, Luca finished. No, Marco's eye burned with intensity. They call me first. I handle it personally. Luca absorbed this, then nodded slowly. You know this changes everything, right? You protect this kid, you're declaring something. You're showing your hand. Everyone will know you've gone soft. Let them think that. They'll come harder. Vargas, and everyone else who's been waiting for you to slip. Then they'll learn, Marco said coldly, that there's a difference between weakness and choosing not to destroy everything you touch. I've spent 30 years building an empire on fear. Maybe it's time I spend whatever's left protecting the one thing in this city that's actually worth protecting. One kid. One act of kindness. Marco picked up his cane, testing his weight on it. You know what the difference is between me and Diego Vargas, Luca? He'd kill that girl to make a point. I'd burn this entire city down before I let him touch her. Luca studied his boss for a long moment. You really mean that? Every word. Marco moved toward the door, then paused. And Luca? Put word out on the street.
Carefully.
I want Diego to know I'm aware of his plans. I want him to know that the Bennett family is under my personal protection. Let him make his choice. That's a declaration of war, boss. Marco smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Only cold calculation and something else, something new that Luca couldn't quite identify. It looked almost like purpose. Good, Marco said. Then let's see if Diego Vargas has the courage to fight a war he can't win. The rain came without warning, the way October storms do in Chicago. One moment clear skies, the next a deluge that turned streets into rivers. Lucy pressed her face against the grocery store window, watching water hammer the pavement. Her mother was somewhere in the canned goods aisle, arguing with the manager about an expired coupon. They'd been here for over an hour, Rita stretching every dollar, comparing every price, trying to make $23 feed 3 people for a week. Stay right here, her mother had said.
Don't move.
Don't talk to anyone. But Lucy was 8, and 8-year-olds got bored. She wandered toward the magazine rack near the entrance, just a few feet away. Close enough to be good. Far enough to be interesting. A glossy travel magazine showed pictures of beaches and palm trees, places that seemed as fictional as fairy tales. She didn't notice when the automatic doors slid open. Didn't notice the man in the wet leather jacket who stepped inside, his eyes scanning the store with predatory focus. But Marco noticed. He stood across the street under a coffee shop awning, his 2 guards flanking him in positions that looked casual but weren't. For 3 weeks, he'd been watching. Not every day, that would be obsessive. But enough. Enough to know the Bennett's routines. Enough to know that Tuesday nights meant grocery shopping. Enough to know that Rita Bennett counted every penny while her daughter waited patiently. Enough to know when something was wrong. The black sedan had been circling the block for 10 minutes. Marco had clocked it immediately, a '67 Impala with tinted windows and Vargas crew written all over it. They were being obvious on purpose. Sending a message. Testing boundaries. Boss, one of his guards murmured. That's 3 of Vargas's men. They're going inside. Marco's grip tightened on his cane. Stay here. If this goes wrong, you know what to do. Boss, you can't. But Marco was already crossing the street, rain soaking through his expensive coat, his bad legs screaming with every step. Thunder rolled overhead, masking the sound of car engines, of footsteps, of danger moving in the dark. Inside the store, Lucy had just picked up a magazine about horses when she felt it, that prickling sensation on the back of her neck that meant someone was watching. She turned. The man in the leather jacket stood 6 feet away, his smile wrong in a way she couldn't explain. "Hey, kid," his voice was too friendly. "Your mom around?" Lucy's throat went dry.
She's
shopping." "That's nice. Real nice." He took a step closer. "You know, I've been looking for a little girl. One who likes to play hero. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you?" Lucy's heart hammered. She tried to back away, but bumped into the magazine rack. "Leave her alone," Rita's voice cut through like a whip. She appeared from the aisle, grocery basket forgotten, her face pale but fierce. She pulled Lucy behind her. "Don't you dare touch my daughter." The man's smile widened. "Just being friendly, ma'am. Though your girl should be more careful. Lot of dangerous people in this city. Lot of accidents waiting to happen." "We're leaving." Rita grabbed Lucy's hand and headed for the exit, moving fast but not running. Running meant panic. Panic meant they'd won. They burst out into the rain, and that's when Lucy saw it. The black Impala jumped the curb, tires screeching, water spraying in sheets. It aimed directly for the sidewalk, for them. Engine roaring like a beast. Lucy froze. Everything slowed down.
the car.
The rain. Her mother's scream. The absolute certainty that this was how her story ended, on a wet sidewalk outside a grocery store, because she'd been kind to the wrong person. Then someone grabbed her. Strong arms wrapped around her small body and yanked her backward, spinning her away from the curb. She heard the car's brakes scream, heard voices shouting, heard her mother crying her name. When Lucy's vision cleared, she was on the ground, sheltered beneath someone's body. Rain poured down around them. The Impala had stopped inches from where they'd been standing, its driver's door already opening. The person holding her shifted, and Lucy saw his face. The man from the alley. His suit was drenched, his dark hair plastered to his forehead. That same sad eye from a month ago now burned with something else, something protective and fierce and absolutely terrifying. "Stay down," Marco whispered. Then he stood, placing himself between Lucy and the car. 2 men emerged from the Impala. One reached into his jacket. "I wouldn't," Marco's voice carried despite the rain. He didn't move, didn't raise his own weapon, didn't flinch. Behind him, his 2 guards had appeared, weapons drawn but not yet aimed. "A standoff. You're already dead men. Question is whether you want it quick or slow." The men hesitated. They'd expected an easy target, a scared family, a quick message, an escape before anyone noticed. They hadn't expected Marco Santini standing in the rain like an avenging angel. "Diego sends his regards," one of them called out, trying to save face. "Tell Diego," Marco said quietly, dangerously, "that he just declared war. And tell him, I don't lose wars." The men looked at each other, then back at Marco. Whatever they saw in his face made them think better of their orders. They climbed back into the car and sped away, tires screaming. Marco turned immediately, kneeling beside Lucy despite his injuries. His hands shook as he checked her for injuries. "Are you hurt? Did they touch you?" Lucy shook her head, unable to speak. Rita pulled her daughter away, clutching Lucy to her chest. "Stay away from us. This is your fault. They came after her because of you." "I know," Marco's voice cracked. He stayed kneeling in the rain, looking up at them. Not like a crime lord. Like a man carrying unbearable guilt. "Mrs. Bennett, I know. And I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry." "Sorry?" Rita's voice broke. "Sorry doesn't protect her. Sorry doesn't." "I have men watching your building," Marco interrupted. 24 hours a day. No one will touch her. No one will touch your family. I swear it. We don't want your protection. We want you to leave us alone." "I can't." I found Lucy's, and she saw that same sadness from the alley, multiplied 1,000 times. "Your daughter saved my life. She showed me kindness when she had no reason to. And because of that, dangerous people want to hurt her. I can't walk away. I won't. Not while there's still breath in my body. He stood slowly, painfully, and looked at Rita. You have every right to hate me, but whether you want it or not, I'm going to keep you safe. All of you. That's not a threat, it's a promise. Then he turned to Lucy, his expression softening. You shouldn't have to be afraid because of me. You shouldn't have to pay for my sins. But I'm going to fix this. I'm going to make sure you can walk down the street without looking over your shoulder.
How?
Lucy's small voice cut through the rain. Marco smiled sadly. By ending the things that make this city dangerous. Starting tonight, he limped away into the rain, his guards following, leaving Rita and Lucy standing on the wet sidewalk, shaking and alive. As they walked home, Rita never letting go of Lucy's hand, neither of them spoke. But Lucy couldn't stop thinking about his eyes. How they looked at her not like she was a problem to solve, but like she was something precious. Something worth protecting. Something worth changing for. Detective James Reed had been on the force for 19 years. He'd seen corruption, violence, and every shade of human darkness Chicago had to offer. But he'd never seen anything like this. Sir, you need to see this. Officer Martinez stood in the doorway of the precinct's evidence room, her face pale. All of it just arrived. On the table sat 3 cardboard boxes. No return address. No fingerprints. Just a simple note typed on plain paper. Everything you need to end the Vargas crew. You're welcome. Reed opened the first box. Financial records. Transaction logs. Offshore accounts. Shell companies. Every dirty dollar Diego Vargas had ever moved, laid out like a roadmap. The second box contained photographs, drug shipments, weapon deliveries, meetings with city officials who were supposed to be clean. The third box was the crown jewel, recorded conversations, dozens of them, with timestamps and transcriptions. This is, Martinez breathed. This is everything. This is years of investigation handed to us on a silver platter. Reed picked up one of the recordings, labeled Vargas, Bennett threat, October 15th. He pressed play. Diego's voice filled the room, crystal clear. Find out who she is. Send her a message. Let Santini know what happens when you show weakness. Let that kid learn what happens when you play hero in the city. Martinez's eyes widened. He's threatening a child. Get warrants, Reed said immediately, already reaching for his phone. Every name in these boxes. Every address. We move tonight. Sir, where did this come from? We can't just. Someone on the inside helped us. Reed met her eyes. Someone with access. Someone who wanted Vargas gone more than they wanted to stay hidden. And, honestly, I don't care who. A threat against a child? We're taking that bastard down. The raids happened at 3 a.m., synchronized across 12 locations. Diego Vargas was dragged from his bed in handcuffs, screaming about lawyers and rights and conspiracy. His lieutenants fell like dominoes, arrested at warehouses, at their homes, at a private poker game that became a very public perp walk. By sunrise, the entire Vargas operation had been dismantled. Every news channel showed the same footage. FBI agents carrying boxes of evidence, DEA hauling away drugs and weapons, Chicago PD standing proud at their biggest bust in a decade. 17 arrests in total, the reporter announced. Federal prosecutors say they have enough evidence to put these men away for life. But the real question everyone's asking, who provided the information? Sources close to the investigation say someone from inside the criminal underworld cooperated, though the informant's identity remains unknown. In his Oak Park mansion, Marco watched the news coverage with Luca beside him. It's done, Luca said quietly. Vargas is finished. The girl is safe. Marco didn't respond. His eye was fixed on the television, but his mind was elsewhere, calculating, planning, seeing the endgame nobody else could see yet. Boss, we should celebrate. We just eliminated our biggest rival, without firing a shot. We didn't eliminate a rival, Marco said. We started a countdown. Luca frowned. What do you mean? Marco turned, and Lucas saw something in his boss's face that made his blood run cold. Not fear. Not anger. Something worse.
Acceptance.
Every criminal in this city just watched Vargas fall because someone leaked to the cops, Marco explained. They're all asking the same question. Who was the rat? And how long before they come to the obvious conclusion? You, Luca's voice dropped. They'll think it was you. They'll know it was me. I've gone soft. I've been quiet for weeks. I showed weakness by protecting a child. And now, conveniently, my biggest threat disappears through police intervention. Marco laughed bitterly. I might as well have signed my name on those boxes. So what? Let them come. We'll handle it like we always do. No, Marco stood, moving to his desk. He pulled out a folder, thick, heavy, full of documents. We won't. Because they won't just come for me, Luca. They'll come for anyone I've shown interest in. They'll come for that little girl and her family, just to prove a point. Just to punish me. He opened the folder. Inside were more financial records, more evidence, more secrets. But these weren't about Vargas. These were about Marco Santini's own empire. Luca's face drained of color. Boss, what did you do? What I should have done years ago. Marco's voice was calm, steady, certain. I can't protect Lucy from the criminal underworld while I'm still part of it. Can't keep her safe from the violence while I'm the one creating it. So, I'm not going to. You're going to turn yourself in?
No.
I'm going to disappear, Marco gestured to the documents. But first, I'm going to make sure there's nothing left to fight over. The docs? I'm selling them to legitimate buyers. The clubs? Closing or going clean. The protection rackets, the gambling operations, all of it. I'm dismantling everything. That's suicide. You'll have a target on your back from every crew in Chicago. I already do, Marco smiled sadly. But here's the thing, Luca. I don't care anymore. For 30 years, I built an empire thinking it mattered. Thinking power and fear and control were what made life worth living. Then an 8-year-old girl gave me chocolate and looked at me like I was human, and I realized. His voice caught. He took a breath. I realized I've been dead for years. Just walking around, pretending. She saw something in me I thought was gone. And I'll be damned if I let this world take that light out of her. Lucas stared at his boss, this man who'd been feared across Chicago, who'd built an empire on blood and ruthlessness, and saw someone entirely different. Someone who'd found redemption in a child's kindness. Someone willing to sacrifice everything for it. What do you need me to do? Luca finally asked. Marco handed him the folder. These documents? They go to Detective Reed. Anonymously. Let him finish what we started. Let him clean up this city properly. And you? I disappear. Fake my death if I have to. Leave Chicago. Become nobody. Marco looked out the window at the city he'd once ruled. No more wars, Luca. Not while she's still out there, trying to be good in a world that punishes kindness. She'll never know what you did for her. Good, Marco's reflection in the window smiled. That's the point. She gets to grow up normal. Safe. Without ever knowing that monsters were real and watching over her. Luca nodded slowly, accepting the weight of what his boss was doing. When?
Soon.
Very soon, Marco turned back to the room, to the empire he was about to burn down. But first, let's make sure every threat is eliminated. Every loose and tied up. Every danger removed. And then Marco Santini dies, he said quietly. And maybe, just maybe, the man who gave a dying stranger chocolate gets to live. Outside, Chicago continued its endless churning, crime and hope, darkness and light, all mixed together in the October night. But somewhere in that city, a little girl slept safely, protected by shadows she'd never see, and a guardian she'd never know was watching. 10 years changed everything. Lucy Bennett stood in front of the bathroom mirror, adjusting her graduation cap for the 100th time. 18 years old. High school graduate. And in 3 hours, she'd walk across that stage and leave childhood behind forever. The apartment on Kedzie Avenue looked the same, Same peeling wallpaper, same worn carpet. But the people inside had transformed. Tom's hair had gone gray. Rita's hands shook more from the years of double shifts. And Lucy had grown from a small girl with a chocolate bar into a young woman who still carried chocolate in her bag, just in case someone needed kindness. "Lucy, mail's here." Her mother's voice called from the kitchen. Lucy emerged from the bathroom, smoothing down her blue graduation gown. The mailman had left a stack on the kitchen table. Bills mostly, the usual collection of things her parents pretended not to worry about. But one envelope stood apart. It was thick, cream-colored, expensive paper that didn't belong in their world. Lucy's name was written in elegant calligraphy across the front, Miss Lucy Grace Bennett. Her middle name. No one used her middle name. That came separately, Rita said, her voice strange. Certified mail. The mailman made me sign for it. Lucy's hands trembled as she picked it up. It had weight to it.
Substance.
She looked at her mother, who nodded, and carefully broke the seal. Inside were 3 things. First, an official letter on heavyweight cardstock, embossed with a logo she didn't recognize, a phoenix rising from flames, with text beneath, the Lucy Grace Foundation for Second Chances. Her breath caught. "Dear Miss Bennett, it is our profound honor to inform you that you have been selected as the inaugural recipient of the Lucy Grace Foundation Scholarship for Academic Excellence and Exemplary Character. This full scholarship covers tuition, room, board, and expenses for 4 years at the accredited university of your choice. The foundation was established to support young people who demonstrate extraordinary compassion and moral courage in the face of adversity. You were chosen not for your grades, though they are exemplary. Not for your achievements, though they are many. You were chosen because 10 years ago, you showed the world what true humanity looks like. You saw someone in need and helped without hesitation. You gave kindness when you had every reason to walk away. That single act inspired the creation of this foundation. You are quite literally the reason it exists. We hope this scholarship allows you to continue being the light this world desperately needs. With deepest respect and gratitude, the Lucy Grace Foundation Board of Directors." Lucy's vision blurred. Her hands shook so badly the letter fluttered.
What?
"What is this?" she whispered. The second item was a photograph, black and white. Taken from a hospital room window, she could see the 4-pole reflected in the glass. The image showed a city skyline at dawn, Chicago's buildings silhouetted against a rising sun. Something about it felt deeply personal, like a memory captured on film. The third item was a small note card, handwritten in neat, careful script. "You saved a life once. Now go live yours. You never knew it, but for 10 years I watched from the shadows. I watched you give away your lunches. I watched you tutor struggling students. I watched you volunteer at homeless shelters and visit lonely elderly neighbors. I watched you grow into exactly the person I saw in that alley, someone who makes this broken world a little less dark. I dismantled an empire to keep you safe. I erased myself from this city to ensure you could grow up without fear. It was the easiest decision I ever made. This scholarship is not charity. It's justice. You deserve every opportunity this world can offer. You deserve to become whoever you dream of becoming. And you deserve to know that one small act of kindness 10 years ago sent ripples through time that changed everything. You won't see me again. You won't hear from me. I'm a ghost now, by choice, by necessity. But I want you to know that somewhere out there, someone is proud of you beyond measure. Live well, Lucy Grace. Live freely. Live the life I never could.
M.S.
The card slipped from Lucy's fingers and fluttered to the floor. Rita picked it up, her hands trembling. She read it once.
Twice.
Then her knees buckled, and she sat down hard in a kitchen chair. "Mom?" Lucy's voice cracked. "Mom, what does this mean? Who is MS?" Rita looked at her daughter, this beautiful, compassionate young woman who had no idea that a monster had loved her from afar, who had no idea that the kindness she'd shown a bleeding stranger had rewritten someone's entire existence. "The man from the alley," Rita whispered. 10 years ago. The one you gave chocolate to. The crime boss. Lucy's eyes widened. "Marco Santini." "He kept his promise," Rita's voice broke. "That night in the rain, when those men tried to hurt you, he said he'd keep you safe. He said he'd fix it. And she gestured helplessly at the scholarship letter.
He did.
He actually did." Tom had appeared in the doorway, still in his work clothes. He picked up the letter, read it, and sat down heavily beside his wife. For a long moment, none of them spoke. "I don't understand," Lucy finally said. "Why would he do this? I just gave him chocolate. I was 8. I didn't do anything special." "That's exactly why," Rita said softly, tears streaming down her face. "Because you didn't think it was special. Because you just saw someone hurting and wanted to help. No judgment. No fear.
Just
kindness." Lucy looked down at the note card, at those words, "You saved a life once." She remembered that day with crystal clarity. The alley, the blood. Those sad eyes looking at her like she was the last good thing in the world. She'd had nightmares about it for months. But she'd also never forgotten the feeling, that profound certainty that helping him had been the right thing to do. "Where is he now?" Lucy asked quietly. Tom shook his head. "No one knows. He disappeared years ago. Some say he's dead. Others say he left the country. The whole Santini organization just
dissolved.
Like it never existed." Lucy picked up the photograph of the skyline. The dawn breaking over Chicago. A city given a chance to start over. Just like Marco Santini had given her. "I'm going to accept it," Lucy said suddenly, her voice firm. "The scholarship. I'm going to take it, and I'm going to use it to help people. Real people. I'm going to study social work or education or something that matters. Because if one chocolate bar could change someone's life that much." She looked at her parents, her eyes bright with tears and determination. "Then imagine what I could do with 4 years of education and a second chance." Rita pulled her daughter into a fierce hug. Tom wrapped his arms around them both. And in that small kitchen on Kedzie Avenue, they held each other and cried for the past, for the future, for the impossible gift that had arrived in cream-colored paper. Outside, somewhere in the vast world beyond Chicago, a man with gray hair and a permanent limp sat in a cafe reading the newspaper. A small article caught his eye. Local student awarded full scholarship to Northwestern University. He smiled, folded the paper, and left exact change on the table. Then Marco Santini, who was no longer Marco Santini, who had become someone quieter and smaller and infinitely more peaceful, walked out into the sunshine and disappeared into the crowd. His debt was paid. His promise was kept. And for the first time in 40 years, his soul felt light. The Chicago River looked different at dusk. Marco had never noticed before, back when he'd owned the city, when he'd moved through it like a shark through dark water. But now, sitting on a weathered park bench with a bag of breadcrumbs in his lap, he saw what he'd missed for 40 years. The way the dying light turned the water gold. The sound of children's laughter echoing from the playground. The gentle rhythm of joggers passing by, earbuds in, lost in their own worlds. The simple, unremarkable beauty of people living their lives without fear. He looked different too. Gray hair, mostly gone on top. Thick glasses that weren't just for show. A modest jacket from a department store, not hand-tailored Italian wool. The cane was permanent now. The limp from that beating had never fully healed. But that was fine. It reminded him of who he'd been, of why he'd chosen to become someone else. Marco Santini had died 7 years ago. Officially, in a car accident in Nevada, his body too badly burned to identify. In reality, he'd purchased a new identity, taken his hidden money, the clean money, earned before blood had stained everything, and disappeared. He'd become Martin Sawyer, a retired accountant. A widower with no children. A quiet man who fed pigeons in riverside parks and bothered no one. It was the freest he'd ever been. He tossed a handful of breadcrumbs to the gathering pigeons, watching them scramble and peck.
17 years since that alley.
17 years since a little girl with a chocolate bar had cracked open his chest and shown him his own soul, withered and dying. He came to this park once a month. Always the same bench. Always at dusk. Because he knew. He knew Lucy Bennett, Lucy Grace Bennett as she preferred now, jogged this path every Tuesday and Thursday. He knew she was a junior at Northwestern, studying social work. He knew she'd organized 3 campus fundraisers for homeless youth. He knew she still carried chocolate in her backpack. He knew because he still watched. From a distance.
Carefully.
Just enough to ensure she was safe, thriving, becoming everything the world needed her to be. The sun inched lower, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Then he heard it, laughter, bright and genuine, cutting through the evening air. Marco's hand stilled in the bag of breadcrumbs. A group of college students jogged past, 5 of them in matching Northwestern hoodies, their breath visible in the October chill. They were young and alive and full of futures that stretched out like open roads. And in the middle of them was Lucy. She'd grown tall, taller than her mother. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail that bounced as she ran. Her face had lost its childhood softness, but kept its kindness. Even now, Marco could see it in the way she laughed at her friend's joke, in the way she matched her pace to the slowest runner so no one got left behind.
Still giving.
Still caring. Still light in a world of shadows. Totally bombed that exam, one of the boys was saying. You did not, Lucy laughed, her voice carrying across the park. You studied for 3 days straight. You're going to ace it. You're too nice, Luce. Has anyone ever told you that? All the time, she grinned. I consider it a character strength, not a weakness. They jogged past Marco's bench, without a second glance. He was just another old man feeding pigeons. Invisible. Irrelevant. Exactly what he needed to be. But as Lucy passed, maybe 15 feet away, a gust of wind caught her ponytail, and she turned her head slightly, laughing at something. For one heartbeat, Marco saw her profile clearly. The same girl from the alley. The same gentle soul who'd looked at a monster and seen a person. She'd grown up. She'd survived. She'd become magnificent. His eyes burned. The group continued down the path, their laughter fading into the distance. Marco watched until they disappeared around a bend, swallowed by the gathering darkness. Guess that's what redemption looks like, he murmured to the pigeons. Not fireworks. Not grand gestures. Not even recognition. Just a good person living a good life, unaware that she'd saved more than one man in an alley 17 years ago. She'd saved the possibility of hope. The idea that people could change. The proof that one small act of kindness could ripple out and reshape reality. Marco reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small chocolate bar. The same cheap brand Lucy had given him all those years ago. He'd carried one every day since, a reminder, a talisman, a promise to himself never to forget what mattered. He unwrapped it slowly, looking at the river. Thank you, he said quietly, to the girl who couldn't hear him, to the memory of who he'd been, to the man he'd somehow managed to become, for seeing me, for saving me, for showing me that even monsters can find their way back. He broke the chocolate bar in half. One piece he ate slowly, savoring the sweetness that had once tasted like salvation on a cold October morning. The other piece he held for a long moment, feeling its weight, its significance. Then Marco stood, slowly, carefully, leaning on his cane, and walked to the river's edge. The sunset had turned the water into liquid fire. Somewhere upstream, Lucy was laughing with her friends, living the life he'd burned down an empire to protect. He tossed the chocolate into the river. It hit the surface with a tiny splash and disappeared beneath the golden water, carried away by the current. A farewell, an offering, a final letting go. Live well, Lucy Grace, Marco whispered. Live the life I never could. Be the light I never was. He turned from the river and walked away, his cane tapping against the concrete path. The pigeons scattered and resettled. The sun slipped below the horizon. And Chicago, beautiful, brutal, broken, hopeful Chicago, continued its eternal dance between darkness and light. Behind him, the river flowed on, carrying chocolate and memories and the ghost of a man who'd learned, too late but not too late, what it meant to be human. Above, the first stars appeared. And somewhere in the gathering night, a girl who'd saved a life once jogged home, never knowing that 17 years ago, she'd also saved a soul.